Alright guys, welcome back to another tutorial. Today I'm going to cover binomial factors of polynomials. This is going to be let's see, it's the first and second tutorial of Unit 2 in Algebra 1B, and I think it's also in Liberal Arts 1A if I'm not mistaken. Alright, so we're just going to cover both of these tutorials at the same time. I got a request for one of them, but they're actually entirely related, so I'm going to just do them both in one kind of shorter video. Or one sort of longer video rather. It's gonna be a fairly easy lesson, but yeah, I don't know. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go over to the applications and I'm going to pick a couple of problems from each of these tutorials just to show you guys how it works. All right, and I'll work through everything here. The minimum requirement that you'll have to know here is how to pull out a number. You'll see what I mean. So it should all make sense. If you have a little trouble with multiplication and whatnot and addition, we might have a little trouble. Just let me know if you guys need anything after this video. Alright, so let's start with our first one. This one's just going to be in the first mastery test, or first application rather. And like I said, these applications are actually really good for figuring out how to input these math problems and how to do these math problems. So here's the first example they give me. 3p parentheses x minus 1 plus y x minus 1. Also close parentheses. Okay, so this is problem number 1, and I think the first thing that I want you guys to understand is I actually call this lesson something different. When I learned it, I always called this factoring by grouping. And what that means is that we're going to group things up together. And your first step here is, let me pick a color, you want to take whatever you see that's exactly the same. So you'll notice in these parentheses, you've got x minus 1, you've also got x minus 1. They're the same exact thing. So we're going to group them together. So here is x minus 1. Alright, but you've also got other stuff. Let's use purple. You got things like 3p and this plus and this y, right? So you've got 3 more things left over. The idea is you're going to group them together also inside of a parentheses. So let's take our 3p, let's take our plus sign, and let's take our y. That's actually it for that first tutorial, that first mastery test, that first application. That's all you're doing. You're taking whatever's in parentheses that's exactly the same. You're going to group them together in one. You're going to take everything else, you're going to group it together in one set of parentheses. Put them right next to each other so that they're foiling, and you end up with your answer. Now, let me explain. Actually, okay. So first off, that's all you have to do, okay? That is all you need for this lesson. If you can group and then group, you've got all the answers. It's that easy. You just group these up, and then you group these up. So group the things that are the same, group everything else, whatever's left over, all up, okay? And then that's your final answer. Here's the thing. So these two things are equal to each other, and to prove that, I'm going to go through the trouble of solving both of these, alright? This next part is not required for your tutorial at all. I just wanted, for those who are curious as to why we just did that, for you guys to have an answer. So let me go ahead and do this top part. Okay, so I'm going to do this top part. I'm going to distribute it out. So let's pretend we're not doing it the short way. Let's do it the long way. We're not factoring it. We're just going to solve it. So we're going to distribute our 3p. 3p times x is 3px. 3p times negative 1 is negative 3p. Bring down our plus sign. Y times x is just xy. And y times negative 1 is minus y. Alright, so this is what happens when you work that top part out. Let's go ahead and do FOIL and do our bottom part. Alright, so I'm going to do that one in, I don't know, purple. Worked out pretty well. So let's go ahead and FOIL. So hopefully you guys remember how to FOIL, but I'm going to rewrite this whole thing. That way we can FOIL it a little bit easier. And we're going to do FOIL, F-O-I-L. And FOIL is first. So the first terms of each parentheses multiplied together. And you're going to end up getting x times 3p is 3px, and then outer, so it's the outsides, that x and that y is just going to be plus xy. Inner is going to be negative 1 times 3p, or negative 3p, and then last is going to be negative 1 times y, which is negative y. So what I want you to notice between these two problems is that after we worked them out, we ended up with essentially the same thing. 3px, 3px, negative 3p, negative 3p. A positive xy, and then a negative y and negative y. So we ended up with the same answer regardless. So what we're doing is we're not changing the form of our equation. Let me go ahead and get all that on screen for you. But we're not changing the form of our equation. What we're doing is we're just factoring, which means we're making it the same exact equation. This and this and that are all the same. They're just all in different formats, and this is the one you're looking for here. We can go backwards and we can actually go back up here, but this is what we've got. Okay, so when you're doing your tutorial for this first tutorial, binomial factors of polynomials part 1, this is your answer. You just need to group and group. This is the reasoning why. Alright, so just remember the first couple minutes of the video. That's probably the most important for your tutorial and mastery test. This is just to help you understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Alright, so that was part 1. Let's go ahead and shift over to part 2. Sorry, I hit the table, so that probably made kind of a louder sound. Let's go ahead and do part 2. Part 2 is going to be exactly the same thing, except it's going to take you a little step further. So instead of giving you, I shouldn't have thrown that on the ground, instead of giving you your equation to where it already has your parentheses and everything's already lined up real pretty, it's going to give you a slightly uglier one. So here's the example they gave me. Let's see, let me open that up. They gave me, and let me move this back down actually. There we go. Okay, so they gave me x squared plus 2x plus xy plus 2y. Alright, so your first job with this kind of problem, because it isn't all organized real nicely, so here we had our x minus 1's in parentheses, and then we had everything else wherever. Over here, we don't have it as nice. Over here, we have to actually do a little work. Your first step is to get letters that look the same to be on the same area. And what I mean by that is, you have an x squared, so you want whatever has an x next to it. You have that 2x. Then you have the xy at the end. The reason why this is here and it's easier to put it over here is because it has that y attached. So over here we don't have a y, here we don't have a y, so you want to push this over to this side, that way the y's are next to each other. Okay? There is an x in it, but it isn't as good as this 2x to put right next to here. So what you're doing is, let me get a different color, you're pairing up things that have similar letters. So over here both of them have y, over here both of them have x. Alright, it does get more complex than that sometimes, but this is what we're going to run off of. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull out whatever you can. And over here I have x squared and 2x. So you want to find out all the numbers and letters you can pull out of this particular parentheses. Alright, so you always start with the first one. Doesn't really matter which one you start with. I'm going to start from left to right because, you know, life, I guess. So here's x squared and 2x. Let's talk about the numbers first. There's technically an invisible 1 here, right? So there's like an invisible 1, which we can't really see. And so that invisible 1 and 2, they do have a common factor. I could pull out 1, but pulling out 1 doesn't move your math problem forward, so we're going to ignore the numbers for now. But you can pull out an x. Here you have x squared, which is like x to the second power, and you have x to the first power. What that means is that you can always pull out a letter as long as you have one of each letter in each, and you can pull out the least amount. So here we have a 2 and x to the 1, so we can pull out 1x, okay? If for whatever reason we had like x to the third and x to the fifth, we couldn't pull out 5 x's, we could pull out 3 x's. The idea is to always pull out the lesser number, okay? So we can pull out 1x. And let's see what's left in our parentheses after we pull out that 1x. So x squared, if we pull 1x away from it, all that's left is, instead of 2x's, there's going to be just 1x. Bring down your plus sign. Here's a 2x. It was 1x over here, but we pulled that 1x away. So what's left over is just a 2. Alright? We're going to do the same thing for the other side. So let's bring down our plus sign. So that's just going to move down. And then we've got our parentheses. Let's pull out something though. So here we have xy and 2y. So let's talk about the numbers first. So there's an invisible 1 again. Alright, there's an invisible 1, whatever. So 1 and 2, they do have a common factor of 1, but I told you guys that pulling out 1 doesn't do us any good. So let's talk about the letters. How about x? X. Is there an x over here? There's not. You notice that there's only a y. So there is an x here, no x here, so we can't pull it out. It needs to be in both terms to be able to pull out that x. Alright? But let's talk about y. Y, you'll notice that we do have in both terms. We have y here and y here. So let's go ahead and pull out 1y. Alright? 1y. And let's bring whatever down. So here we have xy, but we pulled one of them out of this parentheses. xy, but we pulled one out. What's left over? Just the x. Bring down your plus sign. And now let's talk about this 2y. 2y, we pulled out the y. So instead of 2y, we would write, you probably guessed it, there's a 2 right here. Okay? So now what you've got in your situation is that you've got, again, like in your last, you have x plus 2 and x plus 2. All right. What happens when we have them the same like that? We can do our grouping. So we're just going to group x plus 2 into one parentheses. I don't know why I shifted color here. I just got lazy and decided I didn't want to switch. So, and then you've got whatever's left over in another parenthesis, right? So whatever's left over. Here's an x that's left over. Let's go ahead and write x. Here's a plus sign that's left over. Let's write plus. Here's a y that's left over. Let's write y. And that is going to be your final answer for this one. Okay, so in your second tutorial, what's it called? Binomial factors of polynomials, part 2. In that mastery test, this is what you're doing. You have to arrange your letters to make sure they're next to each other. So put parentheses, all right? And then you have to factor stuff out. So over here I factored out x, over here I factored out y. Normally going to happen something like that. You're probably going to factor out 2 letters, but you could factor out numbers too. You never know. It's just you factor them out as best you can, and then you just do your grouping again. X plus 2, we group it in one parentheses. Everything that's left over, x plus y, we're going to group it in another parentheses, and you're done. Okay, that is the entire 2 lessons all together in about 11 minutes. So this should help you guys out. Let me know if you need more examples, and I would be happy to show you. All right, best of luck, and message me if you need anything else. I'll see you guys next video.